Okay, I'm going to talk about why averages matter. Let's start with a game. We're going to toss a fair coin, and if it comes up heads, you're going to win 50% of your current wealth. And if it comes up tails, you're going to lose 40% of your current wealth. Now you can play as many rounds as you like. So just to illustrate, let's imagine you had $1,000 and you tossed the coin 4 times. So your wealth would go up and down as a function of whether it was heads or tails. And if you decided to stop after these 4 coin tosses, you'd be walking away with an extra $1,000 from where you started. Now, of course, you might be unlucky and you might lose money. And remember, you can play as few or as many rounds as you want. Now, I want you to ask yourself, would you play this game? And if you said yes, I'm going to put you in the yay camp. And if you said no, I'm going to put you in the nay camp. So it's yay or nay. Right. So because I've not met you before, I didn't know what you looked like, so I just drew you as sentient earplugs. Okay, Rory here, pictured here, clearly from his outfit is not unfamiliar with the concept of risk, so we're going to imagine that he plays the game. So here he is playing the game for 60 minutes. So he's tossing the coin once per minute for a whole hour. You can see his wealth going up and down and up and down. It's kind of hard to see if this is a good game. Maybe he was unlucky. So let's try to get a better picture by taking 10 Nudgestockers, having them play independently, and then averaging their wealth to see if that helps us reveal a pattern. It's kind of does a little bit. It looks like it's a reasonably good game, but it's still pretty noisy. So let's push that further and take 10,000 Nudgestockers. So I'm aware that's not 10,000, but it's just a picture. So you can see that the noise has pretty much been averaged out by averaging over 10,000 people. And what emerges is that when we average over many people, wealth grows at approximately 5% per minute. It's pretty good returns. So the yays are probably feeling pretty smug. But before we get carried away, think about what we did. We've averaged over people, right? I want you to ask yourself, is this average relevant to you as an individual in your life? Now, it could be if all of Nudgestock was sharing their lifetime cumulative wealth, but that's kind of a big ask, right? And if they don't, well, maybe the averaging over people isn't necessarily the most insightful thing to do. What we can do to get a different perspective is to look at one individual, here Rory again, and track his wealth over time, much longer time. So here, over a full day, 24 hours. Again, playing once per minute. So it looks like he's having a bad day there, right? So there's a downward trend. So let's extend that to track him over a year, once per minute for a whole year. No sleep, no holidays, okay? Looks like a pretty terrible game for him. Maybe it's a bad year, maybe it's not his lucky flat cap. So let's see how other Nudgestockers do. So here we have 10 different Nudgestockers independently playing, but rather than averaging, we're just plotting them separately. Okay, all 10 of them seem to be having a pretty bad day, and likewise, a pretty bad year. So what we see is when we average over a long time for individuals, wealth seems to be shrinking at 5% per minute, just for whoever we randomly pick. So what's going on? Averaged over many people, wealth grows at 5% per minute, but averaged over a long time, wealth shrinks at approximately 5% per minute. Now, this is you looking confused, and I'm hoping you're confused, otherwise I'm not doing my job properly. So let's think carefully about the different averages. So we have one average, which we call the ensemble average, which is an average over many people at a fixed time. At a single time, we average over many people. And the time average is a little bit different. We average one person and we average them over a long time. So that sort of indicates over the time dimension. And we can check the time average by repeating it and seeing how it changes over different people. Now, if the two types of average are the same, then we say that the quantity we're interested in is ergodic. Now, in our game, the changes in wealth was not the same for the ensemble compared to the time average. So we would say that that's non-ergodic, right? Because the ensemble average was going up and the time average was going down. Now, to fully explain this requires sort of to go deeper into the math, but here's a rough intuition. Most people are losing money, right? We've seen that their wealth goes down. So how come the ensemble average, when you average over everyone, it goes up? Well, for the unluckiest people, those tossing tail after tail after tail, the wealth just shrinks faster towards zero, but it never goes below zero because it's multiplicative. Whereas for the luckiest, those that are tossing heads time and time again, their wealth explodes. And it explodes to such a degree that it pulls up the ensemble average. So it's an inequality producing game. Now at this point, I want to install an alarm. We call it the ergodicity alarm. And it basically monitors what is being said or whatever you're reading. And it looks out for the word average. So for instance, in the advertising sector, average returns are expected to be 13% higher than blah, blah, blah. So it sees the word average, it goes ding. What kind of average? Is it ensemble average? Is it time average? And then after that, ask yourself this: is this average relevant to me or my company or my football team in this situation? Now let's test the installation of your alarm with another game. Heads, you win $50. Tails, you lose $40. Same rules as before. Would you play this game? Yay or nay? So if we fast forward and we average over a large number of people, large number of Nudgestockers, ding! What kind of average? Well, it's an ensemble average, growing at $5 per minute. Is this relevant to us? Not necessarily. Show me the time average. Here's the time average. Time average is growing at $5 per minute. Well, time average suggests that wealth changes at $5 per minute in the long run. What's the difference between the games? Dynamics. So in the first game, we had multiplicative dynamics. So the outcome of each coin toss effectively was multiplying your wealth, right? So if it came up heads, it would multiply your wealth by 1.5, and if it came up tails, it was multiplying your wealth by 0.6. And in this game, it was the nays that did best, right? Because the nays didn't play, they avoided losing the money that the yays, unfortunately, suffered. In the second game, it had additive dynamics. So in this game, if it came up heads, you would win $50 regardless of what your wealth was. It was either adding or subtracting money independent of your actual wealth. So it was just purely additive. In this game, it was the yays that did best, right? The nays didn't play, so their wealth stayed at the same value. The yays played and they enjoyed the growth in their wealth. Now it turns out that if you simulate these types of games, and also if you do the mathematics, your wealth will grow faster if you're risk averse in multiplicative games, generally in multiplicative games, and if you're risk neutral in additive games. So if this is true, and we think it is, you need to adjust your risk taking according to your environment. Now this sounds obvious, of course that seems to make sense, but in terms of decision theory, risk attitudes are almost always assumed to be fixed, even though we know that when we test them, they differ between people and also they differ over time. This is nicely summarized by the following quote: "A person's capacity for risk can be no more changed than his nose." So we did an experiment to figure out, can people's attitude towards risk change when you change the dynamics of a game? So here's lots of money. So this is, if you're in the experiment, we give you lots of money. We then show you different images, and you learn how those different images affect your wealth. So you see an image and your wealth changes. See another image and your wealth changes. So you learn the dependency between the image and how your wealth changes. And then once you've learned that, you make decisions between different gambles composed of those images. So basically these gambles are effectively the same as what I've already shown you. So in the additive game, one of the gambles could be win 50 or lose 40, and the other gamble could be win 30 or lose 30. And you simply have to choose based on which gamble you would prefer to take and have applied to your wealth. So you make lots and lots of these choices repeatedly for all possible different types of gamble. Okay. And you're doing this once every 10 seconds, and we collect hundreds and hundreds of decisions from you. So that's the additive game. The multiplicative game is the same, but instead of additive, it's multiplicative. So you're choosing between gambles, and then you keep being asked to choose between new gambles. Now, so according to the theory, so if ergodicity and the time average is dominating your choice, then you should be risk neutral in the additive game, because this is the attitude that will allow your wealth to grow fastest. So risk neutral means neither risk seeking nor risk averse. It's kind of like a balance between the two. So if all of the people were risk neutral, we would see them cluster around this point. Now, in the multiplicative case, risk aversion is what you need for your wealth to grow fastest. And there's a particular amount of risk aversion that you need for multiplicative games. So if we were expecting people to be growing their wealth at the fastest possible rate, then we would see people cluster around this point. And under more conventional theories, which don't distinguish between dynamics, you would expect the risk attitudes to basically be the same between the two conditions. So what do we find? Well, it's a reasonably good, this was a reasonably good prediction of the data. So the first observation is there's a big difference between additive and multiplicative. People are changing their risk attitude purely as a function of the changing dynamics of the game. Not only that, they're also doing a reasonably good job of actually maximizing their wealth. So it's somehow they can, even though they don't know anything about ergodicity or time averages, they intuitively can figure out which strategy, which risk attitude is going to grow their wealth at the fastest rate. So I'll end with just a brief taster of what ergodicity offers to behavioral science. Simplicity. It's ultra simple. It basically assumes that people maximize their time averages to grow wealth at the fastest rate. That's it. That's the main crux of the theory. It offers explanation. So it explains and unifies different decision-making phenomena, such as risk aversion, loss aversion, temporal discounting, and ties them all together under this basic principle. Other theories are typically describing but not explaining. And that's one reason I like it as a theory. It might be wrong, but it has its advantages. And most importantly, as a scientist, it is highly falsifiable. So it makes very bold quantitative behavioral predictions that are vulnerable to falsification, which makes my job very easy in terms of designing experiments to attempt to falsify the theory. This is the team of co-authors. These are some of the people that inspired the experiment and helped refine it. Thank you.